a lot going on in Washington, from the president pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Change Accord to the upcoming congressional hearing with fired FBI Director James Comey. Occidental College professor Caroline Heldman joins us now to keep us all up to date on what is happening, because there's so much.
Every week.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to start out with President Trump pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement. What do you think it really means for the country moving forward?
Well, I think there are two numbers that are important here. The first is that 97% of climate scientists believe that climate change is happening and that it's human-made. And the second is that 71% of Americans, according to a recent poll, did not want to pull out of this. So this is a symbolic gesture to the rest of the world that we're not going to take climate change seriously. And in fact, in the last couple of days, representatives from the White House have refused to say whether or not they believe climate change is human-made. So I think what we see is a political decision being made which sends the signal to the rest of the world, which doesn't really have a huge effect immediately because it takes 3 years to withdraw. In addition to that, it was more symbolic in the first place, and that this wasn't a binding agreement. So I think it will not have immediate repercussions, but it will probably mean that we won't be investing in clean energy. And that's important because it is growing. Clean energy is growing at 12 times the size of the economy growth, right? So if you want to create jobs, you look at solar and wind. All around, this is not a popular decision, but one that Trump supporters likely really embrace because he promised this during the election.
Okay, what about Jim Comey? He's set to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee on Thursday about Russian interference in the election. What do you think it's going to mean for the Trump administration that he's now testifying and what he could reveal?
Well, this is the day that Trump did not want, right? In fact, his White House has been scrambling to find a way to maybe use executive privilege to shut this down. I think they discovered that that would not be an effective technique. Jim Comey is likely going to go before the Senate committee and reaffirm what he's already said in his memos, which is that the president asked him to stop investigating Michael Flynn. If that is true, that could be a possible obstruction of justice charge, which would lead us into unknown territory, because we don't know if the president is above the law or whether or not we can prosecute a president. Certainly there's impeachment, and 43% of Americans now support impeachment, which is an incredible number, right? 4 in 10 Americans supporting impeachment proceedings to begin. And that would be a long trial if it were to happen in the House and the Senate. Unlikely to happen because both are controlled by Republicans.
And even more trouble, you know, news came out this week that his advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner attempted to set up a back channels with the Russians. How significant is this in the ongoing Russian investigation?
I think it's symbolically significant once again because there are now so many links, and Jared Kushner is now a person of interest in addition, you know, to lots of other folks. So Paul Manafort, Michael Flynn, Michael Cohen, the president's attorney. With that said, this was not illegal, but it was unusual and it was suspicious given the broader context.
And this week, Trump, who is known for tweeting, he used a word in a late-night tweet, kofifi, which a lot of people aren't even sure how we say it, what it really means. Do you know what it means?
Yes, I am one of the few people that Sean Spicer was referring to. I did my research. I think it's a portmanteau of coven, right? C-O-V, and Fifi. That's a scorpion-faced character on the popular networking site 4chan. So I think he was referring to a scorpion witch. And I had no idea the president was into fantasy.
Wow, interesting. You know, most of us just thought it was a typo, wondering what was going on. But
well, yes, of course. Occam's razor, it was a typo, and it would have been nice for Sean Spicer to just come out and say, hey, the president made a mistake. Why didn't he just do this and make a joke? I mean, speaking of crisis management, this was his moment to appear human, right? But unfortunately, he couldn't acknowledge that he had made a mistake that all of us have made at various points on Twitter.
That's the thing. Most of us, you know, you're going so fast, it's so easy to hit the wrong key, and
I'm
then
a typo
off it goes.
queen. That's right.
All right, Caroline, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We certainly appreciate your insight.